Hi, welcome to Yellow's Talker Show. I'm DV LeBron. Today, my very special guest is Mr. Joshua Shea, who came on the show to speak about something that's kind of the unspeakable. A lot of men and women nowadays are dealing with something that is taboo still to talk about, and that's porn addiction, and it's affecting a lot of men. And I'm sorry that I keep coming back to men, but it is something that I've heard from my personal interactions with men, that they're dealing with stuff like that, and maybe they don't call it addiction, but they're dealing with it. Josh, thank you so much for coming on.
Thank you so much for having me today. I appreciate you giving me this platform and the opportunity to have a discussion with you about this.
Well, definitely. So first, before we get into all the good stuff, I just wanted to have you introduce yourself to my viewers.
Yeah, my name is Joshua Shea. I currently make my living as a full time coach, helping people, both men and women, who are dealing with pornography addiction. I also help the partners of pornography addicts who generally are going through something called betrayal trauma when they find out that their partner has been hiding this from them for so long. I'm also an author. I've written 4 books about this stuff. But perhaps most importantly, I at one point also was a porn addict. I was a porn addict for 24 years, starting at 12 years old. I was also an alcoholic, started that at 14 years old. When I was 37, which was 11 years ago as we record this, everything came to a head. And I ended up in rehab for both of those problems and ultimately learned just how deep this went inside of me, what it was all about, and completely 180-degree turnaround in my life. And now I use both my story, all of the research I've done, and my history as a journalist and someone who can ask questions and can probe into people's lives. I use these all together and help people get beyond their pornography issues because, like you said, it's such a taboo topic that most people still won't talk about.
Yes, yes, it is. And it affects, some of the stats that I saw. Something like 11% of men have porn addiction, 3% of women, 20, something like between 18 and 35 is the highest use. Men are closer to 70% of using porn versus women who are somewhere around 30. These are stats I pulled off the internet.
These those
But
are those are actually old stats. I know them, but everything since the pandemic is so much worse.
I can imagine. Now it is something that is a taboo. Nobody wants to come out and say, "Hey, I'm a porn addict." So
Absolutely.
before we go into all this other stuff, um, what is a porn addict? What constitutes an addiction to porn? What is that defined?
Well, addiction is addiction is addiction. And really, what happens, every addiction, whether it's gambling or drugs or drinking or video games, there's a process that goes on in the mind. And essentially, the mind becomes rewired, the neurotransmitters, where somebody could have one beer, somebody can look at porn for a few minutes and then completely walk away. The mind of an addict is actually wired differently so that it's always craving whatever it is that allows a rush of chemicals to hit the brain. These chemicals are serotonin, dopamine, oxytocin, endorphins. These are known as the pleasure chemicals. So, what happens for an addict is that with repeated use, they learn that, boy, I do this. It makes me feel great, no matter what the addiction is. And then pretty soon, that neuroplasticity, which is how, our mind gets wired, starts to change and it starts to literally become programmed to constantly be seeking these chemicals. And people, learn that, gee, a bad day can be okay if I'm using, and an okay day can be great if I'm using. Ultimately, I believe that an addict is somebody who understands that they do not have much control over a behavior, and they understand that that behavior will likely lead to negative consequences, but they can't get themselves to stop.
And that definitely is addiction. So how does, in your experience, how do you end up there? I mean, what is normally the beginnings of this, where you end up getting clutched into this world?
Again, this is a very similar story for people of most addiction, and it's that they're introduced to it along the way, and it just clicks. And for myself, um, or I should say, for most people, addiction is not the main problem. Addiction is a symptom of a bigger problem. And that bigger problem, 99% of the time, is some kind of childhood or late teen. Uh, what's the word? Geez, I'm
There's
blanking
a
here.
some trauma, some late
Trauma,
trauma.
trauma. Yes, excuse me, trauma.
That's it.
It's about trauma. When I was 12 years old or 14 years old, when I developed my porn and my alcohol addictions, what happened was I found a shortcut to feel better. I did not develop the coping skills. I did not develop the problem solving skills needed to continue into adulthood and to simply learn how to deal with life on life's terms. I had two shortcuts, porn and alcohol, and that's what most addicts, end up having is they have this shortcut, but they don't develop proper problem solving skills. And that's why they end up with so much trouble later in life.
What does addiction to porn really do to you? What are the signs? What are the repercussions of being addicted to porn?
Well, I mean, in being addicted to porn, there are such symptoms as losing friends, spending too much time. People who are addicts change their behaviors. Where they used to do pleasurable things, they engage with their addiction. Where they used to have friends and hang out with other people, they now spend their time with addictions. There's a lot of isolation there. Also, with pornography, in men, it often leads to porn induced erectile dysfunction, which essentially is that you cannot perform or even maintain an erection during sex with a real person. You can only perform with yourself when you're watching pornography. That's one of the biggest side effects. But also, in more studying, we're learning, that pornography is creating absolutely warped views of normal, common human sexuality, especially in younger people. And it's creating a sexually ill society. 20 years ago, 30 years ago, something like OnlyFans would not have flown because of where society was. And these days, you know, plenty of people are in the do-it-yourself porn industry putting material of themselves online, and it's changing the world. We are becoming immune and we are becoming accepting of pornography without really understanding what it's doing to us as individuals and doing to us as a society.
So does this stuff desensitize you, and make you into, and maybe for a lack of better words, will it make you a bad husband? I'm sorry, I don't have a better word, because bad is not really one to attach, but how will it affect you in your marriage?
Well, statistics show that most husbands or boyfriends lose interest in engaging with their partner over time because what we understand, based on, again, this neuroplasticity, is that when a man or woman is shown a new sexual image, one they haven't seen before, they get a bigger kick of chemicals than if they're viewing the same picture or video again and again and again. This is why most people don't use the same pornography twice. But when you consider having a partner, how many hundreds or thousands of times have you seen your partner naked? How many hundreds or thousands of times have you engaged in intercourse with your partner? Well, pornography is going to stunt your brain. It is literally a disease because it changes the chemistry of your brain. And what it's going to cause is a inability to create those chemicals during the actual sexual act with your
Wow.
partner. And this doesn't even touch on the secrecy, the lying that happens in so many couples who I work with. Most husbands do not tell their wives, most boyfriends do not tell their girlfriends, and the other way around too. Most females who are wives or girlfriends that have these issues don't tell their partner what's happening because of embarrassment or fear of what will happen to the relationship.
So since you led into this, let's talk about that because you said something about betrayal trauma. What is that?
Betrayal trauma is the type of trauma that I deal with the most. And in my line of work, it is generally when a wife, although not always, but it's generally when a wife discovers that her husband has been using pornography. Usually he's been lying about it. Usually it's been happening behind her back. And usually it's been happening for a long amount of time. This causes three things to happen in the woman's life. Number one, she asks herself, is it her fault? What did she do wrong? Is she not pretty enough? Is she not good enough in bed? Why did he become this way? What did she do? Spoiler alert, she did nothing. It has nothing to do with that. And that's where I start with my clients. The second issue that a woman or a betrayed spouse or partner has is that they begin to ask themselves, well, if this person was able to lie to me so convincingly about this for so long, what else have they lied about? Can I believe anything they've ever told me since they've lied to me about this for so long? And then the final place that most people go who have been betrayed by their partner using pornography is, what the heck do I do now? It's one thing if you've been dating somebody for 2 weeks, you can just kick them to the curb. But what happens if you're in a 15-year marriage? What happens if you have two kids and a mortgage and your lives are very intertwined? What do you do at that point? And these three pieces create the betrayal trauma that I deal with my clients on a daily basis.
Now, one of the things that, because you were saying about the difference and they look at different porns and try to get that same serotonin kick and stuff. When it relates to the relationships, have you seen that the person who's addicted has developed unrealistic goals of sex, or unrealistic ideas of what sex should be with their partner?
Absolutely. And the younger they are, the worse this is happening. A couple of years back, I was giving a presentation at a college. It was a female group at their health center, centered around pornography and sexuality. And one of the young ladies asked me if I had ever heard that women her age were not wanting to have sex with virgin men of that age. And I said, no, I haven't really understood this. And a lot of the girls' eyes perked up and we started talking about it. And since then, I've talked to a lot of women about this who are of college age, and they don't want to get with virgin men Because virgin men have been trained since the age of 11, 12 years old on pornography, and they believe pornography is real. And, you know, pornography is not real sex. In 98% of pornography, according to one study, the female is almost always degraded, either physically or verbally. She's twisted in ways that real people can't have sex. And this doesn't even get to the point of how things finish, which is not how they finish in real life most of the time. And I've spoken with young ladies who talk about, the guy will get to their room with them and then, push them backward on the bed because they think that's what the girl wants based on the pornography they've grown up watching. So it's actually a bigger problem for younger men who are coming into their own sexually these days because they've been raised, if you're under 30 years old, you really don't remember a world before high speed internet. And that's when everything changed. And we just keep having people getting older and older who've been raised on nonstop hardcore pornography coming through them, whether it be the computer or their phone or many other ways to get it.
So is there, how and you were an alcoholic. You know
Yes.
how some people, they supposedly they drink socially, and some people are alcoholics, and I don't know if there's really a distinction there, but people make a distinction there. I just drink every once in a while, and then the person who's always smashed down drunk, the person who just clicks on, a porn site and checks out every once in a great while or every once a month or something, is that an addict? What does that look like?
I don't think they are an addict. Like we said, there are people who can have a beer or two every few weeks. I can walk into a casino and I can spend $15, $20, and whether I win or lose, I walk out because I don't have that gambling addiction gene. If you look at statistics, most statistics now show that men are there 15 to 20% of men who use pornography do qualify as an addict. So that means that 80 to 85% don't. And there are 11 symptoms of porn addiction. I believe that if you have 3 or more, there's an issue. But if you don't have these symptoms, I'm not going to say that looking at porn is healthy, but I think for these people, it isn't unhealthy.
So what are these 11 things that you're talking about?
Well, number one is planning your day around pornography. Another one is that you lose a sense of time while you're using pornography. Very common one I hear. As I mentioned earlier, not doing things that used to be pleasurable. There's also the escalation of content. Most people over time have to get into more hardcore and more weird things to get the mind going. Um, Spending less time engaging with people, not being interested in dealing with people is another big one. And there are a few more. I'm not going to go through all of them, but there are 11 of them. If people want to check on my TikTok page or my website that you've got listed here, all 11 of them are right there. You can take the quiz and you'll find out if you're an addict or not. But as I say in the beginning of that video, it's not so important whether you're an addict or not. It's if you're willing to do something about it.
And that is the big one. Now, what is the biggest impediment that you've seen working with these couples, working with people? What is the biggest impediment to even getting help?
Um, it is the idea that this is so taboo. Now, there are some crazy statistics out there post pandemic. One of them is that 91.5% of men who use the internet look at porn at least once a month. 60.2% of women who use the internet look at pornography at least once a month. This doesn't say that they're addicted. This just says that they watch. But I bet anything if you conducted a poll of, do you use pornography? So many more people would say no, because it's still taboo in our world to talk about naked people doing these naked things on film and admitting that you enjoy watching it, because when you admit you enjoy watching it, everybody knows that the act of masturbation comes with it. And most people are too ashamed to admit it. We're still, especially those of us who are a little bit older, we have been raised very puritanically. We have been raised that the body is a shameful thing, that sex is a shameful thing, that there's a certain kind of person who talks about it. And people who are addicted are losers. They are from the other side of the tracks. They're not like us. And that's what's really stopping it in most cases. And I see this in my first timer sessions I have with people, where they will be all stiff and rigid coming in and being like, I've never talked about this. I don't know how to. And once they realize that I am somebody who, I'm not going to judge them, I'm not going to shame them, I'm not going to embarrass them, they get very comfortable. And a lot of times, what I hear at the end of a first time session is, oh my God, this was so much easier than I thought. And I feel like there's a weight off my shoulders, because I've never talked about this for 5 minutes, much less an hour before. And it's very freeing for them, because society still tells us there's something wrong with you if you use pornography. And there's certainly something very wrong with you if you develop an addiction to it.
Wow, that is intense. Now, how does somebody come out of that? Like, how do like your book say? And I'm sorry, I'm gonna put the title and all that when I promote your show. But he's a porn addict. Now what? What does that look like now that you know? Okay, you're an addict. What happens now?
Well, you have to decide you want to get help. And I believe that there are so many different modalities of help. You can go to a therapist, you can go to a coach like me, you can go to a 12-step group, you can go to a non-religious type of group. You can do the research and read up on it yourself. You can watch videos on YouTube, and most people who are successful mix these things together. And there are just so many ways that you can enter learning about this. And once you start learning about this, and once you start hearing other people's stories, you don't realize you realize that you're not alone on an island, that a lot of people are dealing with this. And there are a lot of people like me out there who want to help you. And just as if you had a gambling addiction, just as if you had a food addiction, most of us have gone through this as well, and we're not going to make you feel bad about yourself. We were successful getting through this in whatever way that we did, which almost always involves going through and dealing with that trauma from youth and developing those problem solving skills. Once that happens, the world is open for you to heal. Because if you can heal the trauma, you don't need to keep being involved with the behavior that you use to satisfy that trauma.
And that makes sense. It's something like what they say, self-medicate. When you have ADHD, they self-medicate if they don't get the treatment. And there's been a lot of studies on that. But I mean, it's just is such a powerful topic. Now, when you have somebody that decides, hey, I I I need to get away from this, but I also work on my computer 30 hours a week or more. Okay. Every time I get on the computer, it's like, it's got a gravitational pull to a porn site or something. But how does someone like that deal with it?
Well, again, this is the first step of recovery. A lot of people are like, how do I quit? And it's like, you can quit the behavior, but that doesn't mean you're fully in recovery. It just means that you're dealing with a symptom. It's like taking cough syrup. It really doesn't affect your illness, it just deals with a symptom. So, there are many different ways that people can cut down. Some are successful with cold turkey. That's how I did it. Most of my clients, we have to wean them down over time. And for some of them, if they can't sit at their computer without using, if they can't be on their phone without using, we figure out what are the triggers, what are the websites or software that are causing these problems, when are you using this, and we figure out how to create new patterns, how to create new ways of being. One of the biggest things that I have to do with people is to tell them, you need to stop using Instagram. You need to stop using TikTok. These two things are the number one and two triggers when it comes to both men and women using pornography. And I think in most cases, they know they're going to use pornography, but they tell themselves the story, I'm just going to look at Instagram. I'm just going to look at TikTok. They eventually see something sexual in nature, and that sends them down the rabbit hole and over to the porn sites. If they don't start with the TikTok, if they don't start with the Instagram, will they still end up there? And again, we talk about different behaviors. Some people would be like, I only use at night when I'm in bed. Well, don't go to bed so early. Stay up and watch TV. Be around people. Leave your phone in the other room when you go to bed. It's a matter of changing lifestyle so you can start to rid yourself of this. And this deals with the physical side of healing. Once you stop feeding your mind this pornography, again, because of this neuroplasticity, your mind rewires and goes back to a more non addict, non diseased way of being. And that's what you have to do ultimately to fix the physical side of things, is to just abstain. So we figure out how to get them to abstain, and that's not the toughest part. The toughest part is when we go mining for that trauma and they have to relive it, they have to talk about it, something that they've tried to stay away from for so long. So when I'm dealing with people, yes, we deal with the physical, we get them to stop using, but it's the mental side of things and their history and reckoning with the truth, and not just taking other people's stories and following other people's scripts and making up stories for themselves. We are the stories we tell ourselves. And for the first time, for most of my clients, I make them tell their story for the first time in their life. And I ask some very deeply personal, probing questions that they've probably never considered before.
I could imagine how uncomfortable that can be. Is there light at the end of this tunnel? Because I mean, I know that it
Absolutely.
could probably get really dark on folks. Is there light at the end of this tunnel?
Absolutely, if you want there to be. It's not easy. It is tough. It is frustrating. It is maddening. It is sad at times. It's not an easy road to take, because along with, I looked at alcohol and porn as the two things I could count on in life. And I quit them both on the same day, March 20th, 2014. And it was like, okay, on paper, these are the only things that I can count on. Now you want to take them away from me? Um, it's a matter of living a new life, having a lot of aha moments, which still happen to this day once in a while, and recognizing that I was using because I was a very ill person, and that the people who are using and the people who I'm helping, they're not perverts, they're not degenerates. They are sick people who fell into this without recognizing it was happening. And now, because of my expertise, I can help them find that light. Now, I always let them know up front, you're going to do the heavy lifting. You're going to do 95% of this work. I'm just there to nudge you. I'm just there to say, have you ever thought about this? I'm there to say, have you connected this to this? But 95% of recovery is going to fall on someone's shoulders. If they make the commitment to get there, I think anybody can get there.
And that's wonderful. If you want to know more about this and Joshua and what he's doing, here's his website. I've been scrolling the address, but he's got a website, he's got TikTok, and I'm going to put these links in the comments so that you could get to him. He's an author and he has put out several books. He lives this. This is what he does, is helping people. And I love telling those stories. I love having people on that are trying to make humanity better in some way, shape, or form. And that's something that you should, and I know you always want to stay humble, but applaud yourself. Very few people could say they're trying to make humanity better. You're one of them.
Thank you. I look at it as the first half or so of my life, I was not a nice person. I was a taker. I was not a helper. And now it's going to be different. The second half of my life, maybe I had to go through all of those things so I could get to this point and help other people not go through them. And for one person to go through this stuff, if I can stop dozens or hundreds, hey, I went through it for a reason.
So on my show, I always give the guest the last word. So if you could go ahead and just speak to the audience, whatever you feel like saying.
Yeah, I just want to remind everybody listening that anybody can be a porn addict. I have dealt with people in their teens straight up through their late 60s, men, women, rich, poor, every color of skin, every religion. You are not a special snowflake that, well, that couldn't happen to me. Anybody can become a porn addict. And if you are, get some help immediately. You don't have to live like this. I feel younger, healthier, happier, and so much better off over the last 10 years that I've been recovery than I did in my 20s or the first half of my 30s. You can live a much healthier, much better life, and you probably want to. It's just a matter of taking that leap.
Well, again, thank you so much, Joshua, for coming on the show and talking about this very, very important subject that's affecting a lot of men out there. Make sure to check out his stuff. He's doing good things. If you have that issue, you can reach out to him. I'm sure he's more than happy to help you out. Can you stick around after the show real quick?
Absolutely.
Thank you.